All right.
Yep. Let's call the Monday, July 19th, 2021 meeting of the Dalton City Council to order. Ms. Harlan will lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The agenda is before y'all. Are there any changes to be made in it? If not, I'll entertain a motion to be approved.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Harlan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Nobody from the public filled out the comment cards. I guess there is none. Next is a special recognition from the Police Department Traffic Enforcement Officer of the Year recognition.
Good evening. I'm Officer Dykes with the Dalton Police Department. I'm with the Traffic Enforcement Unit. And so I just want to thank y'all for allowing us to be here tonight to present the award to the Traffic Safety Officer for 2020. This award is given annually to an officer that has demonstrated a high focus on four main areas that cause crashes and injuries. These four areas are failure to wear a seatbelt, speeding, distracted driving, and DUI, as well as continued traffic education and educational events conducted by the officer. Since joining the department in 2019, this officer took to traffic enforcement. He has continued to grow in his efforts to make Dalton streets safer. In 2018, Georgia enacted the hands-free law to help reduce distracted driving related crashes. Distracted driving crashes have been a huge concern for Georgia as the number of crashes across the state increased by more than 400% from 2006 to the year 2016. This officer certainly did his part in 2020 to help enforce the Georgia hands-free law. This officer not only has the most distracted driving contacts for the department, but he also won the Mountain Area Traffic Enforcement Network 2020 Award for distracted driving enforcement by having the most contact with distracted drivers in the entire network. This network includes more than 30 law enforcement agencies. By having 347 distracted driving contacts in total, this officer addressed 800 state and local ordinance traffic violations in 2020. Of those 800, 539 of those were violations of the four main contributing factors to crashes. Through 2020, though 2020 brought very, very major challenges and taking training was difficult, this officer was able to add to his traffic tool belt by adding a speed detection to be an operator. He put this training to use and took home top honors for the Dalton Police Department with 174 contacts with speeding violations in 2020. This officer is well deserved of being the Dalton Police Department's 2020 Traffic Safety Officer of the Year. Please help me welcoming this officer, Officer William Metford, to come up here and accept his award for 2020 Traffic Officer.
Thank both of y'all for what y'all do for our community. Next, the minutes are before you from the July 6, 2021 meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to be approved.
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Cruz,
Second.
second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Unfinished business 3, second reading of ordinance 21-12 to declare, authorize, and approve residential nuisance property abatement through administrative process in lieu of judicial process in certain circumstances. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As we discussed at the July 6th meeting, this would retool our dangerous building ordinance to allow the city to create an administrative process for the abatement of residential nuisance abatement cases where we've got structures unfit for human habitation that have been identified through the Code Enforcement Department and or the building inspector. What this ordinance, as we discussed last time, would do is allow the city to intervene in these cases under 3 conditions. Number 1, it's got to be a residential property. Number 2, the persons that own the property have to sign a consent agreement with the city to provide permission to enter the property and an easement to enter the property to clear the structure. The third condition is that the persons will, as part of that consent agreement, repay the city its hard cost associated with the demolition, which is typically the landfill tipping fees, as well as any environmental sampling or abatement cost. As I mentioned at the last council meeting, the fire department, Chief Pangle's actually working with his staff right now to get personnel certified to do asbestos inspections completed in-house, which will further streamline this process as we move forward. Right now, there's about 8 different single-family residential structures who have expressed interest in participating with the city to clear these nuisance cases. So we're excited about, again, adding another tool to the tool belt to be able to clean the city up. Be glad to answer any questions. There have been no changes, I will say, since the last meeting. This is the same text that was presented at the last meeting.
A question that came up from somebody, y'all still have the authority to charge whatever y'all feel like the fair price is, right? Not just, if you wanted to charge for y'all's time, you could.
That's correct. And
Yeah.
that's what we would do if the person does not consent, because what we will have to do at that point is work with the city attorney and the municipal court system to do a nuisance abatement through the court system. The entire purpose of us doing this is to streamline the city being able to intervene quicker, number one, and to reduce the cost to the city, the legal expense of the judicial process, as well as the cost to the individual of having to go through that process as well.
Any other questions, Andrew?
Well, I'd like to point out too, from what I understand, some of the folks complaining about these are obviously really bad health hazards with rats and things in them, and different things that need to be cleaned up. So I think it's a good move.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on this?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Goodletts, is there a second? Second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 4 is another second reading, ordinance 21-13 of the Unified Zoning Ordinance, proposed text amendments for accessory structures, townhouses, procedures regarding rezoning withdrawals, small animals, and microbreweries. Ethan?
Mr. Mayor, the Unified Zoning Ordinance text amendments, I think we've had the first reading and worked through those. There's one discrepancy that came up, and that is that the gross vehicle weight for the vehicles allowed to be parked in the structures on the residential R5 properties for the city is potentially going to change from 10,000 to 13,000 from what the minutes and the resolution currently states. And other than that, there have been no remissions of the proposed text amendments, any additions or amendments. That's the only thing subject to change. And of course, that would still be within the classification of what we would consider a one-ton vehicle, typical work trucks. That is not a 18-wheeler or dump truck or any large major box trucks or anything like that. So that's still staying smaller in scope. We just want to make sure they're given that enough weight for that particular type truck to exist.
So the county still hasn't taken action on this?
Now, they've had their second reading of that ordinance, but it has not been approved by the county currently.
I think probably we need to table this until they take action on it.
Would you like a motion on it, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Motion to table.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cruz, second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. We'll take it up after the county then does theirs. New business, number 5, CDBG subrecipient agreements for City Refuge, Boys and Girls Club, Dalton Housing Authority, Northwest Georgia Family Crisis Center, and Latin American Association. Cindy, I don't know if you realize or not, I think that is about 85% of the paperwork we got in here. Is that
Yes, definitely.
definitely federal government money?
Right. These are the 5 agreements, our subrecipient agreements. As you may recall, on May the 3rd, we approved our CDBG funding of $402,298, and 5 entities were awarded money, and these are the subrecipient agreements that go with that funding.
This is what our consultant recommended, correct?
Yeah, we have to enter into these agreements.
Yeah.
We legally have to.
Couple of questions about
Okay.
these. they later show proof of how they've spent the money?
Yes, they have monthly.
Alton and or Whitfield County, is that, I'm just curious about what the limitations are about where they can, the parameters of where those expenditures can go.
They have to be utilized on low income. 51% of what they spend these funds for have to be utilized for low income Dalton City residents. They do program reports monthly.
Cindy, also, it's my understanding in the scoring of it, they balance it off that you're able to receive certain funds based on how they scored as well. So that's one thing I think is important that goes into it, is sometimes we may have something that maybe we feel like maybe not as worthwhile as something else, but how it's scored has to do with how you get the money and balance for what you actually get.
Yeah, the scoring process, there's several different factors that we look at, but also the number served, how many people are going to be served is a big factor.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on this?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Goodlett, second by Ms. Harlan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 6, Police Department lease agreement for copier equipment with Jarrett Business Machines.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, this is a revised lease with Jarrett Business Machines for the police department. We had looked at cost and saw that we were paying more than we should have been for color copying the way we were doing it. So we've revised our existing lease with them and included color with them. It's just a standard 48-month lease that'll increase our costs with them, but decrease it in buying color toner for our other printers.
Tell me again, because I've asked this question many times, it seems like, with the city. Why do we lease them instead of buy them?
Just looking at long-term and the amount that you pay in repairs and all the other things that they do to them over time, it was found to be cheaper to lease the machines. And when the machine reaches the end of its life, you get a new machine. So
When we've done this studies and all that, figured this out? All right. Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I think everyone in the public sector, pretty much private business sector, pretty much does that now because the value of them drops so much. And to replace them, you're much better off to do a lease because they're not worth anything after 4 years.
Mr. Mayor, one other thing about it, this is year to year. It can be canceled if it's not put in the budget by the mayor and council by state law. So this lease is modified to be one that the mayor and council controls through the department. If next year it's not propitious to do it, you don't have to.
Okay. Is there a motion on this? Motion by Ms. Harlan, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goodlett. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 7, DCA local government approval form for Northwest Georgia Family Crisis Center for 2021 Emergency Solutions Grant Program. Cindy, is that you?
Mr. Mayor, I can cover that if you need to.
Is for them to get their emergency solutions grant. We have to say that the services that they are providing fall within our HUD consolidated plan, and it does.
I assume it does. All right. Any other questions? Is there a motion on this? Motion by Ms. Harlan, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cruz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Number 8, reappointment of Brian Wright to the Development Authority. I think he's already agreed, though.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Cruz, is there a second? Second by Ms. Harlan, all in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Also, under supplemental business, I'm appointing Mr. Cruz to take Mr. Wall's place as the liaison to the Rec Commission. If there no be other business, I'll entertain a motion we adjourn.
So move.
We're adjourned.